right. Who's ready to hear Shmuel teach this morning, hey? Shmuel, for those of you who may have recently joined Kingdom within the last year, Shmuel was here a year ago and was an incredible time of teaching, but also exposing us to the communities of Judea and Samaria and what's happening over in Israel. In fact, I think since the terrible atrocities on October 7, Shmuel's one of the first people, other than our Israel seminar, from Israel to actually speak on this. I know we have Pastor Enoch and the family who've come back. But we're very interested to hear what you have to say today, Shmuel. For those who don't know Shmuel, Shmuel is Samuel, but in Hebrew, and you can call him Sam. And his last name is Junger. And he's the director of CFOIC Heartland in Israel. And he brings this message from Judea and Samaria. And we were just chatting upstairs. He's not representing a ministry that volunteers and pops into Israel. His family is the house next door. You go into Judea and Samaria, and his house is right there. It's in amongst what's happening in Israel. Shmuel was born and raised in Israel. He served in the IDF, so he's the real deal. He's the real deal. But then it gets better. He's got 2 academic degrees, one in law, one in Jewish history, and then he studied the Talmud for 7 years. So those of you who wanted to challenge his theology today, do so at your own peril. He'll probably answer you with a question because that's what he does. That's what you do. Shmuel lives in Zufim, a small town in Zuvim, a small town in Samaria, together with his wife Michal, and they've got 4 wonderful children. Michal's grandparents were among the founders of the Kedamin, the first Jewish community in Samaria. Therefore, Shmuel's family represent the 3rd and 4th generations to have settled in Samaria itself, which is pretty amazing. So I would love it today, and just before we welcome him, we are going to do something very special. As we do as a community, at the end of the service today, we're going to take up a love offering for Shmuel as a community and for the ministry he represents. We're also going to have an opportunity to have some Q&A. And so if our service does run over time and you need to leave around the 11 o'clock mark, I'm going to get up and make that a clear distinction that if you need to leave, you can leave. But we're going to continue with some Q&A. We're going to release the children. Again, parents, enjoy that. And, we will. And then we'll continue on with the Q&A as long as that takes. However, Shmuel has a lunch appointment at 12. So I'll just keep that in mind in your questioning, in all of the questions you're thinking of this morning. So can we please do a big Kingdom welcome? Put your hands together and let's welcome Shmuel as he comes to speak today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here again. How are you? I must tell you, I've been many places in the world. I think I've been to more than 40 states in the U.S. Hundreds of places. I think one of the places that really left a mark on me is this place. There's something here in the environment, in the coffee, in the leadership that really resonates with me. So it's really a pleasure to be here. And I'm very glad that I came again. And thank you for coming. And thank you for having me. I'm not going to lie. Not an easy time for us. Last year, I remember I stood here and I spent 25 minutes. I remember this, sharing a story from the book of Samuel about the 3 ladies on the well and a bit long question, long answer. You remember that? I tried then to tell you about the importance of being part of the story. Remember, that was the point, how they wanted to be a bigger part of the story. Unfortunately, this time, I'm going to share with you my little small part of the story in the horrific event of October 7th. Woke up in a day that I think we're not going to overestimate. It's going to change forever the situation in Israel. It wasn't like anything else before. It wasn't similar in any way. Things have changed that day, flipped our mind. We see things differently. I think the world see things differently. And the day started like the most regular day, a day of holiday, a day of Simchat Torah. The night before, we were dancing with the Torah, celebrating the finishing of reading of the 5 books of Moses. It's a very a lot of energy that day because you're dancing at night and then you dance again in the morning and then you dance after the holiday. And there's always this time where people say, oh, such a effort in this day after 7 days of Sukkot, after Yom Kippur, after Rosh Hashanah. It's like the end of the end of the end of the holidays. And when we woke up that morning, everything changed for us. So do we have a presentation working? We would love to start, and I will share with you this. So where does my help come from is the question that I want to ask today. I want to share with you my perspective. But the first slide will be this lovely family photo. For you to understand one thing about me, and Pastor that said that, is that I'm married to a very rooted family in Israel. This is my wife's grandfather, and these bunch of rabbis over there, this is our family. You know that there were always Jewish people living in the land of Israel. Always. Even when the time of exile, there were always a few families that really made an effort to live there. They used to live in Jerusalem. Some lived in Tiberias. Some lived in Tzfat. Some lived in Hebron. All those 4 cities are known to be the holy cities of Israel. Why is it that? Because they are holy places. And people always wanted to live in those places. And my wife's grandparents, at this photo, lived there in the 18th century. They lived in Hebron, families, individuals, before establishment of Israel. So you remember the chapter in history that one day in 1929, there was a massacre in Israel. The people who lived in Israel, Arabs, Jews alike, sitting, living life, very hard time in Israel to live. It was called then Palestine. So they were Palestinians to say. My grandmother as well was born before 48. And one day, 1929, they came in the morning, they woke up, they decided to slaughter their neighbors. The Arabs decided to slaughter their Jewish neighbors. Why? We don't know. It happened. It started in Jerusalem, went to Hebron. Literally, axes, knives, whatever comes. The family of my wife, it was the rabbi of the town. And there was one neighbor, one righteous neighbor that stood in the entrance of his apartment and said, nobody comes and attack the rabbi. And every person that went to hide there survived. This young child is my wife's grandfather. And when his daughter, my wife's grandmother, said this sentence, everybody thought it will be reality. She mentioned the fact that a massacre like that could happen then in 1929, when there's no state, when there's no army, when there's no IDF. But now it's different. Throughout the history, Jewish people went through massacres, pogroms. It's not news for us. But what happened in the 7th of October was news, because we have a state. We have an IDF. We have intelligence. We have obstacles. We have Air Force. In all the movies you hear about the Mossad, about the special agents Israel has everywhere. Where were they? At that day, we woke up to an attack that literally said, there's no state, there's no IDF, there's nothing, there's no one. That was the feeling we had. The feeling that people in their homes are being raped, slaughtered, burned. Who could imagine? That morning, if you can go to the next slide, I started the day with learning. Every Sabbath, Saturday, 7:30 to 8:30 for the beginning of praying, me and my friend Elad will learn together biblical studies. It's called the Chavruta. Very important word. Chavruta, friendship, but in learning. And that day was Sabbath, and we sat at 8:30. He left. Now remember, because it was the Sabbath, these devices weren't on. So we didn't get the news so early. The massacre started at 6, even before that. But we didn't get the news only at 8:30. And me and my friend were learning. He leaves to another synagogue for the prayer. Suddenly people begin to come and say, there was this, there was that. We didn't know all the details. And a couple of hours later, my wife comes to me and says, go to your friend. His daughter was there in the south in the party. So I'm going there in my community of Tufim, and I enter this home, and it's like a calling center. They're on the phones. Again, it's a Sabbath and holiday, but in the case of an emergency, of course, everything moves aside. Where is she? At 9 o'clock in the morning, she texts her parents saying, I'm okay. There's an attack here. I'm okay. But then lost connection. What happened? She injured somewhere? She lost her phone? They're looking for her everywhere in the cities nearby, in the towns. There were a group running together. There were 5,000 people or more in that party. And there were people were running, people were hiding. For a full week, they're looking for her. Two options. One, she died. Second, kidnapped in Gaza. What's the better option? A week of prayer, a week of warning, a week of searching. The next week, on the Sabbath again, I go to my friend for 7:30 in the morning. We have our regular learning. She's lost for a week. We don't know what's happening to her. He wants to believe, he prays, he believes that she's going to show up from somewhere. But when I arrive at 7:30 in the morning, he tells me that a couple of hours before that, a soldier came and told her she died. She was murdered at that event. Avia Genot, 22 and a half years old, my neighbor in Sufim, the daughter of one of my best friends in the community. I'm sharing with you this to put you in line with this reality. Every Israeli knew someone that was murdered that day. The numbers were so high in such a small country that means that you knew somebody personally. And if it wasn't during the event, it was in the aftermath of the war. More than 250 soldiers already died in Gaza. We know them. If you don't know them, you know somebody who knows them very close. All of Israel is in mourning. All of Israel is crying. All of Israel has lost something huge that day. Can we go to the next slide, please? Waking up on the 7th of October, understanding what happened, is really only the beginning of really what could happen. When they came through the south to Gaza, they passed a $3.5 billion obstacle. And that's the situation. If right now, on the 7th, they would start an attack from the north at the same time, the Hezbollah. Option number one. Option number two is where I live. We here visited Judea and Samaria. Not enough. Later, you can take maps and you will see, and we talked about it last year, we live among the Palestinians. The Palestinians live among us. No obstacles, no fences, no barriers, nothing. Not 3.5 billion one. Fence. What would happen if they will wake up, our neighbors, and decided it went well down south? Look at the success. Shooting inside our communities. Attacking. Now bear this in mind. The day it happened, 350,000 Israelis were drafted. You go to Israel, you serve in the army, like you said, I serve in the IDF, and you think you're done. I did my 3 years, that's it. You're not done. Until the age of 40 or 45, and there are people who volunteer even later on, you're still going to be called. And that day, 350,000 civilians were called to report to duty. Down the south and the north, People left their families. Now, think about it. You're packing your belongings. You live at home, your wife and 3, 4, 5 children, no matter how many you have, and you're going to fight in the north and in the south, right? The feeling is that I'm leaving my wife and my kids here. Nobody is going to protect them when they're going to attack us. All the power goes to the south, goes to the north. What about our communities? We saw in the south, the army wasn't there. In a case of something happened like that, how can we report at all places at the same time? My friends told me we left, knowing that we abandoned our families. And if something happens now, nobody will be there to report. Nobody will be there to act. That was the feeling we had. And of course, everything orchestrated by Iran. Hamas, Hezbollah. It's all a puppet show ran by Iran. A real fear that came to the fact that if we lost so many people in the south, what would happen in the north? What would happen in Judea and Samaria? And then there were the Houthi from Yemen that wake up from, I don't know what happened to them. They woke up, began to attack as well. And just 2 years ago in Israel, there were the Arab Israelis. You remember that? 20% of society in Israel are Arab Israelis. And they decided 2 years ago to check our boundaries. And inside cities like Jaffa, Tel Aviv, Acre, Haifa, places that are coexisting, they decided to try to see what will happen if they're going to show some violence against us. They're not really part of the society for them. We accept them, but they don't like us so much. So you understand that that morning, that night, a couple of days, we felt that the world is coming to an end for us. That's what we felt. We really did not know what's going to happen. People would lock their doors. People would lock their windows. People saved food inside the shelter because we heard what people had to go through. People that waited in the shelter for 8, 20, 30 hours to wait for the army. You go to the next slide, please. Look at the magnitude of the massacre. Just one example. 1 of 4 kidnapped. So many people dead. The single most horrific day in the history of Israel. People tend to say from after the Holocaust, but I don't think so. I think that 7th of October is a date that we don't know. We don't know on a certain date that more people died. We know the Holocaust was bad time, but it was years. One single day that you can mark in the calendar and say, look at this day. The 7th of October will be forever the day with the most casualties, with the most horrific. Yes, and let's not forget, 134 are still there. You remember the scenes. Now, I take it granted that all of you saw all the horrible movies and the blood and the scenes you can only imagine in the movies, and then not even that. And you remember in the beginning there was a dispute. There was everything you saw, and there was the special 44 minutes movie. Have you heard of it? It was a special 44 minutes movie that was so bad that was censored. And the country didn't want to show it to anyone, only to special guests or people that really didn't believe of what happened. A couple of days later, we already heard about AI videos. It's not real. Babies? No. You heard until this day, YouTube, and you will see people claiming that it was fake. Made in labs, made by computers, graphic designer, and whatsoever. But we had this, and we felt that And we understood that things need to change. Where were we before that? Maybe we're going to answer that later. But realizing this morning, that morning, the 8th of October, the 7th of October, that it's really, really a bad situation. Can we go to the next slide? Look at the size of the attack. They were able to penetrate into Israel. The plan was to go much further in. Of course, in the same time, while they penetrate and missiles, it was a well-organized, orchestrated attack. Now, usually I show two videos at this point. One video is a soundbite of a conversation made by a terrorist calling his parents. We're not going to show it today. I'm going to tell you what happens there. You hear a conversation between somebody that calls his father and says to him, I am right now in Miflasim, in a community. Father, I just killed 10 Israelis with my bare hands. Give me mother. And they are praising him and say, wow, Allahu Akbar, thank you, amazing, God bless you. And he's in a, you know how you call your parents when you did something great and you're like so eager to be praised? And they praise him. You're living the dream, son. And he's so happy. And I took the phone from this Israeli. I killed her with my hand. Father, I'm here. What a success. And when you doubt it and you say, maybe some people claim it was a surprise, it wasn't planned, the next video is one of the head of the Hamas in Europe stand inside of the camera and says it's very simple. That's what he says. He says, we planned this for more than 2 years. And what we did was we basically made the Israelis fall asleep. Because we talked about peace and how we care about our people right now, and we don't want to charge or try any war right now. We're good at our place. And he says as follows, he says, our war is always going to be here because we are fighting for our city, for our land, and for our God. And the kicker, the biggest problems the Israelis have is that they love life. I saw this video so many times. The word he uses in Arabic is ma'aruf. It's not even love. They care for life. You know, what's your dream? To live well. I love life, so I care about life. And that's the problem the Hamas realized. We love life. Therefore, throughout the generations and throughout the time in Israel, we did everything possible to continue with life. We evacuated our communities from Gush Katif, from Gaza in 2005. We gave them suitcases of money from Qatar. Every time they would throw a missile, we would say, never mind, we have this Iron Dome. It's going to stop us. And he says as follows, he says, they love life, they care for life, we don't care. We want to die for us. He says, to die as a shaheed, to die as somebody who sacrificed his life in the name of God, that's the best possible way you can do. Your parents are going to be happy. You're going to be the proud of the class. Everybody's going to say, look at him. He sacrificed his life. Now, you see the difference. You have one nation that's looking and searching for life and doing everything possible to gain life. And there's a nation that says, we want to die, we want to kill you in the process, but even if we won't be successful, we'll be happy to die in the name of God. We have a problem. If we go to the next slide, we'll ask this question. From that moment, of everything that happened, no, you can go to the one before. Israel decided to attack back. That we already know. In the beginning, the whole world stood with us. You see so much blood. How can you go against it? It was a great time. Israel said, good, good, go attack them back. And that was the result. Very fast. But not like the world likes to say. It came to a point after a couple of days that our forces went in. And when the forces comes inside, Gaza was ready for them. 250 families broken, with 250 soldiers dying. Many of them, families. Fathers, husbands, because these are not people who are doing the 3 years service. These are the 350,000 people that were recruited for reserve units. Because, I'm going to say it in advance, because we are so caring and because we're doing everything possible to do in the most sensitive way, we have casualties. If we just only want to attack, we would bombard from the air strikes and that's it. The fact that we're going inside, searching home after home, tells you that we do not want to just destroy. We're looking for terrorists. We're looking for the people who want us dead. Planned that for 2 years, built the biggest underground city in the world. So what have we learned? In the next slide. I'm sharing with you the pain of that morning. And it took us a day or two to wake up from the dream, and that's what we saw. The next morning, the 8th, the 9th of October, there wasn't a single Israeli who didn't ask himself, what do I do now for the war? If 350,000 families are drafted, if more than 250 families were taken away from the border in the south and in the north to be relocated in hotels throughout Israel, there's so much need. And in this photo, you can see how people, that's what they did. Packing food for the soldiers, bringing things for the people that lost their homes. People left their home the 7th of October in the south wearing their pajamas. That's it. They had nothing. And Israel just woke up to the occasion and did everything possible to bless them and support them. People would pack food for the soldiers. People go and replace all the males and the women that went to reserve. They had their jobs. You know how many families were left with couple of days babies? The amount of help the families needed, it was endless. All of Israel woke up, and we learned more. If you go to the next slide, we've learned that we are a nation of heroes. Take this guy, for example. And after that, we're going to see the video number 1. This is Amichai Israel Oster. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because the director of this organization before Sandra, the one who established this, her name is Sandra Oster Beres. This is the son of her brother. He was a soldier, and like many other Israelis, after he was released from the army, he went for a big after-army trip. You have many Israelis in Australia doing this. He was in the US at the 7th of October, realizing war happens. Like many other Israelis, in the middle of their trip, he understands he needs to go, travels to the next airport, finds himself in Israel in 12 hours. Later on, after fighting in Gaza, he was killed.
Finally tonight from here in Tel Aviv, Americans answering the call to action by rushing to Israel to help with relief efforts and to help fight Hamas. Here's Marissa Para.
Outside an Israeli airline ticket counter at Miami International Airport, pockets of emotion on full display before a 12-hour flight to Israel. everyone here packing a different story.
Half of my relatives and friends went to the festival. I'm going to the funeral.
The hugs here last a little longer. Most don't know when they'll get another.
I'm numb, like a lot of people are right now.
That's Zach, the father of an IDF reservist, one of hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists being called to duty, some boarding planes before the call even comes.
He found out about the war at 7 and he was on the plane by 11 o'clock.
Nata Nagli's home has been empty for over a week. She drove her son David to the airport with a one-way ticket to Israel.
I gave him a little box with a bug inside and it says love bug, and this is something that he gave me. So I took my little love bug and I gave it to David. And when he hugged me goodbye, he said, "Mom, I promise I'm gonna bring the love bug back."
At the airport, people preparing themselves and more. Suitcases being packed and shipped from around the state.
Everything from certified tourniquets that units have requested specifically to things like magazine pouches. And I think the trucks are here, so we have to run.
Supplies being rushed onto the plane just before departure.
What does it say on these suitcases right here?
It says, Am hanetzach lo mefached.
What does that mean?
It means that the Jewish nation is not scared.
This is a flight of promises hand-delivered.
This is not a time to be frightened. It's a time to be strong.
Marissa Parra, NBC News, Miami.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on. Finally tonight from here in Tel Aviv, Americans answering.
And this is me. A couple of weeks after the 7th of October, I traveled to the US, and on the way back, that's what you see. In the airport, hundreds of duffel bags filled with gear and equipment for Israel. From around the world, people sent equipment. Usually people ask, what, the army wasn't ready? Wasn't it prepared? Here's a secret for you. You ever asked yourself, why do we need so much gear at that time? Simple question, simple answer. Usually, when you draft, there are people that are outside of Israel, people that are students, people that just had a baby, people that their father just died the week before. Reasons why people don't go. In a time of war, you had 100% people coming, and then people that left Israel, been places that you never saw them for years, showed up and say, hey, I want to join as well. So you had 110% people showing up. Yes, there was not enough gear. So Amichai Israel Oster was not the only person who stopped everything in the middle of his trip coming to Israel. The world stood and sent everything possible to us. The next slide, please. You will see another heroic person. That's what we revealed at that day. People had to fight for their families. Fight for their families. This guy, another Amichai. Amichai literally means my nation alive. Held the doorknob for 9 hours when being bombarded, grenades shot at and burned around him. Lost 2 hands in the process. Heroes. They didn't plan that, but their homes were attacked. Or the next person. She is a funny story. You saw it? The next slide, please. Rachel. Did you see this lady? Somebody? Rachel is an interesting story. She lives at home in Ofakim. 2 terrorists come into the home. For some reason, they don't shoot immediately. They enter. Her and her husband sits there, but she's originally a Moroccan Jew, so she knows Arabic. So they come, and she, without hesitation, says to him, you look very tired and pale. Maybe you should sit and eat something. And that's what she does. She bakes cookies, she makes coffee, and for a couple of hours, she holds them in her home with a conversation until the SWAT team comes and finishes them. If we go to the next slide. Next one. People not thinking twice and reacting. It's hard to imagine. You live in Jerusalem. The attack was down south. You hear about the attack. What do? You maybe gear your family. Maybe you're waiting for somebody to draft you. Many people did the unnormal thing, took whatever they had with them, and drove to the south. These are two examples of people that literally saved many, many lives with nothing. They were shooting terrorists there. Hundreds of terrorists penetrated Israel. And inside the fire, they went in and tried to do everything possible. They saved hundreds of lives. You see them with uniforms, but they're not soldiers. They are just regular people trying to help in the time of need. If you noticed until this time, this moment, everything I said was with the feeling of fear, of negativity, despair. But a couple of hours after the 7th of October, the people of Israel rose up to the moment. What you would see are people that singing Am Yisrael Chai, believing that the only thing that's going to make us come out of it is only God Almighty Himself. We need a miracle. And the power of the people going to fight, leaving their families in the back, mothers, children. Out of the 250 people that died in the reserve, many of them are married families. Many, many orphans, many widows. One of them represents the strength, the belief, and the core of everything we're trying to say here. I think it's video number 3. Elisha?
So my name is Hadass Lowenstern, and we will be talking about my righteous husband, Elisha. First of all, Elisha, he was the love of my life. We spent 13 beautiful years together. We have 6 children. My oldest is 12 and a half. He will have his bar mitzvah a week before Rosh Hashanah. And my youngest is a 10 months old baby, a baby girl. And we were so happy together. We had a wonderful life. And we did many things together. My husband was a big Talmid Chacham. Actually, he did so many things in his life. I can say a few. He translated the Gemara Steinsaltz into English, and he used to tutor bar mitzvah, secular bar mitzvah boys here in Israel for their bar mitzvahs, and he would study Rambam Yomi, the daily Rambam, and he was in charge of our schedule here in our shul, and he used to work out. He would get up 4 times a week. He would get up before Vatikin to run. He had time for everything that was important, which was a very rare thing that I saw in him. He did not waste time. He did not waste time at all. He would do sit-ups. So he had this app that you can do, let's say, 50 sit-ups, and then you have a minute, you have like a stopwatch. You have a minute to rest between sets. So within this minute, he would get up. He had an open Mishnayot. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. And then when the app called him back, he would go back, do the squats or whatever, the push-ups or whatever. And then he had another minute. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. On the 7th of October, when you all know what happened here in Israel, and we told each other, okay, this is wartime, and you have to go. We have to be there. So he left the house right after Simchat Torah. He left the house and he went to fight. They were there for about a week, maybe 10 days. I don't know, because we couldn't talk. Ever since he left the house, like 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks before he died, He called me twice. We had about a minute to talk. He told me that he is killing a lot of bad guys, that he is fighting b'shem Hashem, that he is very happy to have the privilege to defend Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. He was very, very happy, and we were both very confident because this is not a private story. This is not about Hadass Lowenstern or about Alicia Lowenstern. This is about the Jewish nation, and this is about our enemies trying to kill us throughout history. My husband was the first tank to go into the south part of the Gaza Strip. There were soldiers who got into this problem there and they got injured. So Elisha tried to go and rescue them with his tank, and they shot at him and they hurt him. Talking about his death is so shuli in my eyes because he only died once, but he lived every day. So telling you how my husband died, he died. Hashem decided that my husband will die. That's Hashem's decision. I can't change it. But I am alive, and my 6 kids are alive. And this is our plan. We plan on living such a wonderful life that the bad guys will never be zoche to live. We will live here in Eretz Yisrael, and we will study Torah, and we will lekayem mitzvot, and we will be a happy Jewish family. And this is the true victory, in my eyes, b'chol mikveh. In our watches, there is a time difference. Right here in Israel, the time is whatever, and you have time differences with us. But in our hearts, there are no time differences, and we love you so much, and we feel you. We feel you davening for us. We feel you praying for us. We feel you not speaking Lashon Hara for us, and we feel you having the best time with your kids for us, and we feel you jogging for us. Whatever you do there, far away, we feel it right here in Israel. And Bezrat Hashem, we will all be together when Mashiach comes. We will all be together here in Yerushalayim, and I will give all of you such a huge hug, like the hugest hug ever.
This is not a personal war or story, she said. It's a story of the Jewish people. Isn't she right? Look at the difference between a kid calling his parents to say, look what I've done, and people that say that our biggest problem is we love life. Indeed, this is a loving life person. It's a person who just lost her husband, left with 6 kids. And what is the only thing she thinks about? We will continue to live. We love life because we live in the presence of God. We love life because we redeem ourselves every day, fulfilling a prophecy in the land of Israel. Isn't it a dream and a life worth living? I want to jump and connect all of this to the story of Judea and Samaria. But according to the time, it's 11. So what do? You want to make a stop? We're going to continue. Sure. Good. So the story of Judea and Samaria and how it's connected to it, I think, is defining everything. As I said in the beginning of 8th of October, we knew that we're coming next. These map represents, the colors represents how many Palestinians live in the area. Nothing stops them from doing it. In the service that they run in the Palestinian Authority, there are more than 75% people that say, we think the massacre was good, we would do it again if we would have the opportunity. The next slide shows you how exactly the attempt happened. Can you move to the next slide, please? This is the news. 2 days ago in Israel, you heard there was an attack? In Eli. A gas station in LA. Maybe it sounds familiar because maybe a year ago, 4 people died in this gas station. A gas station in Samaria. People stop there for gas to fuel. And there's also a small restaurant. A terrorist came a year ago, inside shot, 4 people died. This time at the gas station, happened again, inside the gas station. He kills this young kid on the right, on the left, and this person. Now look how everything is intertwined, as I said in the beginning. This is his father, Arav Gadi. He was my rabbi when I learned after high school. I know the family personally. And this guy was murdered. He comes from a community nearby called Shaveh Shomron. This is his home. Funny enough, a week before that, this family lost their son in the war in Gaza. This is how everything is connected. They're trying, and they're going to continue to try to attack us in Judea and Samaria, where it's the most simple place to do because we live together. If you go to the next slide, you will see this. This is the video. If you can play, maybe it works. Doesn't work? Never mind. You will see over there on the top, there's like a figure there. These are 3 terrorists in the South Mountain of Hebron a month ago that were able to cut the fence and go inside the community. This is the video of them entering. The next slide, you will see what happened. As they enter, with this hole in the fence, very simple to see, nothing stops them. They enter the community. Inside their bags, we see an M16. The security guard of the community comes for the rescue, and they shoot at him as well. And you ask yourself, how could it happen? This map says the story. Why Judea and Samaria is such a crucial place? Because the blue places are the Jewish communities inside the sea of red. This is how isolated we are. When you live in Judea and Samaria, you always under the risk. Now, I'm not going to share what we shared last year about the importance of living in Judea and Samaria. We will just say one sentence. Do not forget, Judea and Samaria is the biblical heartland of Israel. This is what's mentioned in the Bible. This is our recognition of the land that comes from the Bible. And when we live in Judea and Samaria, we understand we're going to be with the risk as they surrounded us. But after 2,000 years of exile, we all believe that a prophecy coming true, coming back to the land, won't stop us, even in the darkest moment. Like now, we know that we are doing God's work in the land, and we will continue to do that. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to help the communities as much as possible to be ready and prepared. So many of the fathers and husbands left the community for reserve. The communities are now by themselves, not enough men. At least they have the equipment. The photo, the video, you should have shown there with the fence. This is camera donated by Christian friends of Israeli communities. The fact we can stop them or be ready is the least we can do, that what happened in the South would never happen again. Now you look at me, I'm a man of peace. I really am. I didn't want to take a gun. In all of the years I live in Judea and Samaria. Why? I thought it's crazy to live in a situation that you need to carry a gun all the time. Right now, I'm carrying a rifle. As I said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And Judea and Samaria is the pinnacle example that when things are going to come in hand, we need to be ready and prepared. Can you play the video of thank you showing what we were able to help and support the communities of Judea and Samaria from the beginning of the war, where everybody was dealing with the south and the north, not to abandon Judea and Samaria.
Hello and welcome to Sde Boaz. We're standing here on the Patriarch's Road, the ancient road to Yerushalayim. This is the spot where Avraham Avinu on his way to Yerushalayim sees the city for the first time. This is where David HaMelech, right here in Beit Lechem, this is the place where he goes down to fight Goliath the giant. Thousands of years later, we're here today, very strategic point between Jerusalem to Beit Lechem. We're the last line of defense before Yerushalayim.
Just behind me is Bethlehem. That's one of the areas where Hamas might come and attack us from. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the people that helped in up till now. You're definitely partners for preventing what happened down in the Gaza Strip happening again. And we are the front line making sure physically it's not going to happen again. Thank you very much.
I'd like to send our sincerest thanks to CFOIC and its supporters. Your generosity allowed us to purchase night vision goggles, which our patrols use every night to help keep our communities safe. We join together in prayers for Israel's security and safety in these very difficult times. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everything and your support.
Our dear friends from the CFOIC, we want to thank you very, very much for your generous donation. It really helped us enhance our security situation here by buying a new drone. We are here in Kibbutz Nahran in the Jordan Valley, guarding our home, and we really...
I stopped the video because we don't have time, and I want to share with you last thought. So what we were able to do in Judea and Samaria because of the help and support of Christian friends, of Israeli communities, was to be there in the time of need, the time of despair, in the time the feeling was, we are next. We are next. It's only a matter of time. But this time, we will be prepared. We will be prepared because of the gear, because of the cameras, because of the drone. And we will be prepared because we know now, we recognize now what our enemy is capable to do. And our enemy has no mercy. And our enemy wants us buried in the ground. What holds us together are three elements. You can go to the slide. Number one and most important one is the fact that we know that God Almighty brought us back to the land after 2,000 years, fulfilling His prophecy, and the word said He won't forsake us. Amen? Number two is the understanding that we are there to fulfill a prophecy and to live in the biblical heartland, but we are also the last obstacle before Israel is going to fall. If we won't be there on the mountains, there's not going to be a single point in Israel that's going to be secured. If they're going to control the mountains, all of Israel is going to be under risk. And I'm saying it because the madness is they're talking about now, yet again, talking about the two-state solutions. What? This is the price you get for killing so many people? To get your own land? We gave them an own land. Look what they did with that. How can you even consider this in Judea and Samaria? And number three is the understanding that behind us are people like you. And now you think to yourself, so I'll share with you. Me and Pastor Carl, we emailed a couple of months ago, 2 months maybe, and he shared with me a letter that was sent around the churches here. And I told him this, I wrote him this, and I hope he understood. At that day, we felt abandoned. We didn't feel that we have a state, a country. For a couple of minutes, we didn't feel we had God with us. It took time for us to recoup our belief, our strength. Everything crumbled that day. When I heard from you and from others that not only we are fighting for our nation and for our life, we knew that we have support around the world. It meant the world for us. You always say, yeah, it means a lot to me. You don't understand the feeling, the void we had, thinking that we are there by our own. Everybody forsake us. Government said, stop the genocide. Yes. International law, news articles, CNN, mass media, social media, everybody against us. After everything we had, abandoned, no hope. And then you came. You and many others, millions around the world, showed us you are not alone. You support what we do in the land. You support God's mission in the land. And you understand you're with us, fulfilling a prophecy of God in the land. It's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging, and I'm not going to tell you it's going to be better anytime soon. But this is the reality, and this is the existence, and that's the journey we're walking with God. I want to thank you again for coming, and I'm going to ask you to continue the love. Share what we're doing. Support our cause. Help the people of Judea and Samaria. Sign and get information from the land, from good sources. And always pray for us and believe that God is planning great miracles in the land. Thank you.